and welcome back. For those of you that don't know me yet, my name's Claire and I'm a final year medical student at Swansea University studying graduate entry medicine. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the medical school interview and my tips for how to do this successfully. Some of you might already know that there are a few types of interview. Now, one is more common than the other. The more common one is MMI, and that stands for multiple mini interview. This is an interview where you have, as the name implies, multiple stations to an interview. So that could be anything from 6 to 9 or more stations, each of which are obviously shorter than if you were to have a panel interview. A panel interview as well might not just be one panel, it might be two 20 or 30-minute panels. Some medical schools also require you to undertake a written exam or a maths exam. These would usually be quite short and not too much to worry about. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the types of interview questions you might be asked, the categories and how to deal with them. So broadly, it's good to bring your own personal experience into your answers and show that you have the qualities of being a good doctor, that you've got a broad range of experiences to draw from. Generally, a good way to speak about your experiences is the STAR method. For those of you that haven't heard, the STAR method stands for situation, task, action and result. So that requires you to think about your experiences in terms of the situation, a little bit about the task, as in what was the task, what had to be done, what did you have to achieve, action, what did you or other members of the team do, and result, what was the outcome of the situation and what was the outcome of your actions. Broadly, that's a good way to formulate some of your answers if they're about situations you've observed or been a part of. So without further ado, let's move on to some of the categories of interview question that any of the medical schools could ask you. There are some questions that I'm sure you've already thought of, such as why do you want to study medicine, how do you cope well under pressure, tell me about a recent experience where you had to work in a team and there was a positive outcome or a negative outcome, and how did you handle that? So aside from those general questions, which some of you may already know about, I'm going to talk about the slightly off the beaten track ones, but still common questions that are important to be aware of. Something that sometimes catches people out is a question on a recent advancement within medicine, or tell me about something you've read in the literature. For a question like this, it can be really good to have a general awareness of what's going on in current medicine, or things that might be advancements in the near future, things that might really take medicine a few steps forward. Showing that you've read around medicine and have a general interest will impress the examiner and show that you really are motivated to a career in medicine. Ethics is always an interesting topic and something that medical schools do like to ask you about. With everything that's happened during COVID, that may well be an interesting ethics slant or question to take, along with the usual topics of things like euthanasia, whether that should be legal. It's worth reading around a few ethics topics as well before the interview. If you really want to impress the examiner, you can be aware of the 4 medical ethical pillars. In medicine, not everything always goes right, and doctors have what's called a duty of candor, which is to be open and honest when mistakes occur. Everyone in their whole life will have had some mistake, whether big or small, and so this is a good interview question for you to show where you've made a mistake and what you did to rectify it, to show that you were open and honest and that you learned from that. That's something that's really, really vital in medicine. We would never move on or learn from our mistakes, so be prepared to answer something on that question. As I mentioned before, insight into what the work of a doctor really entails is key to nailing your interview. I think it's good in these questions to show that you do have a good insight into the role of a doctor because you've seen or are aware of X, Y, Z, and then here it's a good time to demonstrate how you've got this skill or this quality which is important to this part of the role of a doctor and how you've demonstrated it through X, Y, Z. Sometimes in medical school interviews, especially MMIs, you might have an acting station. These stations can seem quite daunting at first. They'll always give you enough information on the day to be able to perform the acting station. Really, these can be completely random. I had quite a few different ones, but as long as you try to be yourself, act honestly, act empathetically, and communicate well, and act in the patient's best interests or the actor's best interests, whatever the scenario might be, then hopefully you'll be able to tackle that with confidence. Overall, I know it sounds really, really cliche, but I think it's really vital in the interview to be yourself. It's really obvious when interviewing people if they have just rehearsed stock answers from the internet. When interviewing future doctors, People really want to see who they're really going to be working with and see who the person sat in front of them really is. So just let your personality show through, give good examples of what you've done in the past and really show off your best qualities if you can. I hope that's been useful. I wish you all the best of luck in your interviews and maybe see you here in Swansea at some point.